In a 5-year span from 2010 to 2014, the baseball team, the San Francisco Giants, won 3 World Series titles. If you're watching this on video, you can see I'm wearing my Giants jersey today. I'm a big fan of the team. Since then, their only playoff appearance was in 2016. And from 2017 to 2020, they lost more than half their games. Ownership was not standing still, and they began to make changes in the club. In 2018, they hired Farhan Zaidi as their president of baseball operations. A very interesting hire because Farhan was the general manager of their hated rivals, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and was instrumental in some of the success that the Dodgers had enjoyed in the years in which he was involved in that organization. Now, baseball operations is the department that is behind the scenes, responsible for the quality of the player and coaching roster. And so Farhan moved slowly at first, retaining the coaching staff from the glory years of 2010 through 2014, and not making big changes with the playing roster. In fact, he was kind of hamstrung by the fact that he had some outstanding contracts that had been given out previously to players who, for the most part, were underperforming. For the 2020 season, Zaidi brought in Gabe Kapler as the on-field manager, and the pace of player turnover began to quicken. This didn't immediately translate to significant improvement on the field. And in 2020, the team still lost more games than they won. However, the vibe around the team had changed. In the world of sports, the best executives are always evaluating their roster of talent. They strive every day, season after season, to field a team of talented players that can win games and fit with the organization's vision and culture. The new on-field and off-field management for the Giants had played no part in the 3 World Series wins in 2010, 2012, and 2014. They were focused on building their own winning tradition, and to that end, they subjected the team to constant evaluation. Great construction CEOs do the same thing. They are constantly evaluating the strength of their company roster. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. In this episode of Construction Genius, I will explain an exercise for evaluating your company's roster strength. It revolves around a simple question that you should be asking yourself and that every leader in your organization should be asking. And using this question, you can consistently evaluate the roster of your organization. And this is the question: do I have the right people in the right seats? Now, you've probably heard that question before, but do you use that question to consistently evaluate your roster? And are you committed to upgrading the quality of your roster over time so that your company performs at higher levels consistently year after year? Let's think about this for a moment. Have you ever promoted someone into a position and it didn't work out? You took a brilliant project manager or executive who thrived running complex projects with your most challenging clients, and then you elevated them to the C-suite. Let's say you elevated them to the chief operating officer. They're running all of your operations. They're committed to you. They're committed to the company. They're aligned with the company values. Still, as they got into the role, it became clear that getting out of the daily oversight of a project frustrated them, and they were uncomfortable leading a larger team of people. They were the right person, but they were in the wrong seat. Or perhaps you've hired a chief estimator from the outside, maybe someone who you had targeted for many years. You thought they'd be a good fit for the organization. You saw as they worked for the company they were working for that they performed at a high level. They had the technical chops that you were looking for, a strong network of relationships, and they had frankly landed some big projects. You bring them into your organization, but they never fit with your organization's collaborative culture, and they struggle to work well with the build work part of your business. So there was clashes between the get work and the build work part of the business. They were the wrong person in the right seat. So if you have the right person, they have all of the cultural pieces there, and they're aligned with your vision and values. If you have the right seat, they have all the technical competencies. And you're always driving to getting the right person in the right seat. Many organizations struggle because they have the right person in terms of their cultural fit, but they put them in the wrong seat. Or they have the right seat for a person in terms of their technical capabilities, but they're not a cultural fit for the organization. So how can you avoid these situations and fill each role in your company with the right person in the right seat? Well, this is what you do. You get out your organizational chart. And if you're the company president or CEO, you start with the people who directly report to you in the three critical aspects of your business: the get work aspect, the build work aspect, and the bill work aspect. So for instance, you look at your CFO, your COO, and your chief estimator or the head of your business development department. And then what you do is you use a simple plus-minus system to evaluate each person for right person, right seat. Are they aligned with your values? Do they buy into your mission and vision? Do they bleed company colors? Then they are the right person. So you put a plus next to their name. Now think about their professional competency. Is the person able to execute their duties without getting overwhelmed and without needing hand-holding? If so, they are in the right seat. So you put another plus next to their name. Right person, right seat, plus. You get the idea. Again, this is not rocket science. You never get rocket science from me here on Construction Genius, but you do get practical tools that if you use them will have a tremendous positive impact on your company. Now, a couple of things to pay attention to as you go through this exercise. You may have some people who've been in a position for several years. They've got their duties nailed, but they're starting to get bored and stagnate. You may be in danger of losing this person to the competition, and you need to think about giving them a new seat if you need to do that. So you should put a minus next to their name if they're the right person, but in the wrong seat because they're getting bored or stagnating. The whole purpose of this exercise is to give you a big picture view of the strength and the quality of your roster and where there may be some weaknesses in terms of execution or some dangers in terms of people leaving your company, getting recruited away from by the competition. And as you go through this exercise and you see those minuses, this can lead to a series of tough decisions. Because again, keep in mind, your goal is to have every position in your company filled with plus people. And if there is a minus next to any name, then you must be willing to take action. If you have the wrong person, even if they're brilliant, you're doing them and your company a disservice by allowing them to stay in the organization. If they are not a cultural fit for your company, they are dragging your business down. And I know many construction executives who allow people who are not cultural fits for their company to stay in the company for far too long. And that has a tremendous negative impact. So if they are not a cultural fit, then you must start making plans for moving them out of the company. If you have the right person, but they are not effective or happy in their seat, then you have three options. So if you have the right person in the wrong seat, here are your options. Number one, you train them. If they can learn, get them the technical and leadership training they need to execute their role. Number two, you could demote them. Now, this is a very difficult thing to do. In fact, I tell you, I have a whole episode on demotion and how to handle that, and I'll link to it in the show notes so that you've got that. It's a very good episode to listen to. But often the kindest and most effective thing you can do is to demote someone. So let's say you've promoted that person to the COO role. They have a bunch of project managers and project executives reporting to them, but they're not doing what they really love, which is running work. You can do them a great favor by demoting them back into that role. Now, that's a tricky situation, and having promoted them, you may actually lose them. You know that happens at times. But a demotion can be the kindest thing for the person and the most effective thing for the organization. The other thing you can do if you have the right person in the wrong seat and they're in that seat where perhaps they're getting a little bored is you could promote them. Now, this can be tricky. You have someone who's earned and wants to move up. They've earned the right to move up. They want to move up, but there may be a limited number of seats in your organization. You see this in sports teams often where you have, let's say, a backlog at third base where you have, the starting candidate and then a couple of other folks who are right there in terms of being able to fill that role as well. Now, in sports, sometimes those folks get traded away. In business, we don't really do that, do we? And so you have to think seriously about your roster and ask, is there another position for this person? So how can you handle the situation where you could promote someone, but you have a limited number of seats? Well, there's multiple answers to this question. You could choose to pursue new project types or expand geographically and put that person in charge of an initiative. Or another approach that works really well is the tours of duty approach. So for example, you can take a talented project manager, and if you have an available hole in estimating, you could move them into estimating and give them an opportunity to spend a year or two in the estimating side of your business, learning about what it takes to put together a good estimate, learning how to win work, and having learned that skill for a couple of years, they could come back into project management or perhaps into project and a project executive role. Now, this requires a long-term vision on your part, and it also requires you to communicate clearly to the folks in your organization what you're doing in terms of those career development paths. But I know this tour of duty mentality works really well for a lot of construction companies. A lot of folks do it when people are younger in the business. You get project engineers and they spend a year reporting to a superintendent, a year reporting to a project manager, and maybe a year over in estimating. And they rotate through even in project management doing different types of work, whether it be public or private work. And that works very, very effectively at a lower level. As you get higher up the chain, it can be a little trickier to do that as they get more mature in their career. But this can be a terrific way to build up those sort of players who have multiple skills by giving them opportunities to get into different parts of your business. Now, as you hear this podcast today and you begin to think about, do I have plus people in my organization? You may think, I'm super busy. I don't really have time to sit down and do this roster evaluation. It's going to reveal problem areas and it's going to put more on your plate in terms of developing people, perhaps having to move people on. But it's a real mistake if you don't take the time to do this. Great sports franchises are consistently evaluating their rosters. And if you want to be a great construction company, you have to do exactly that. So whatever your title is, CEO, president, owner, you're responsible for your company's roster strength. Imitate the best sports executives and dedicate your time to evaluating your roster and ensuring that you have the right people in the right positions. Now back to the San Francisco Giants. Farhan Zaidi has aggressively sourced new talent, and they're always turning talent over and building talent in their organization to replace players whose contracts run out or who get injured. Gabe Kapler, the manager, has been developing the talent they have and holding that talent accountable for their performance. As a result, their roster is getting better and the results on the field are improving. I'm recording this in 2021 and currently they are 30 games above 500. That is to say they've won 30 more games than they've lost, and they're on pace to reach the playoffs for the first time since 2016. Their success is directly attributed to their willingness to evaluate their roster, make sure they have the right people in the right position, and make necessary changes. So let me give you some next steps here, what you can do with what I've shared with you here today. First, don't do this process alone. If you're the president or CEO of your organization, first get your executive team together to evaluate your current roster. Have each one of your executive team members evaluate the people who report directly to them. And have a good, vigorous debate around who gets a plus and who gets a minus. Sometimes they see things that you don't. Sometimes you may have an impression of someone that with some more data from the people who report to you, it can change your impression. And you as the CEO of your organization, even if you have a very large company, you should be concerned about the up and coming talent in your company, and you should have a finger on the pulse. You may not be thinking about, each project engineer every single day, but you should be thinking about Where is my next generation of talent coming from? So have them evaluate their direct reports. You can do the same thing and compare notes. Have a discussion around where you may source new talent. It could be schools, could be universities. It might be free agents. You're always looking for free agent help outside of your organization, right? From other people who work for other companies. It could even be in other industries. This is one insight that I recently discussed with one of my clients. When they're recruiting in college, on college campuses, they're not necessarily just recruiting from construction management programs, but they're looking for smart people. You see, again, in construction, it obviously helps to have a construction background, but if you're smart and you're willing to work hard and you're humble, you can learn the trade or you can learn the profession of building construction projects relatively quickly. And by looking outside of just that talent pool in the construction management programs, perhaps you'll run across some folks who could have a tremendous positive impact in your business. And when you're doing this process, it also helps to go outside, particularly when you as the CEO or president are evaluating your executive group. So for instance, you might have a board of directors where you can sit down and have a frank discussion about the CFO or the COO or your director of business development. What many of my clients do is they have this discussion with me as an outside executive advisor. We have this plus minus discussion about their current roster strength, and we're having many frank discussions often about the fact that the CEO that I'm working with, he or she may be retiring in anywhere from 5 to 10 years, and they're frankly evaluating that roster of executives currently in the organization and asking, are one of these people capable of stepping into my role? And if so, what do we need to develop them in order for them to be confident when that time comes? Now, you've still got to play the games though, right? You're evaluating your roster and maybe you have a few folks who are minuses. You can't go around and fire everyone all at once. You still have to play the game. You still have to field the team. But make the commitment to evaluating the roster, and over time, and this may take quite a time, make the necessary changes. Now, in the show notes for this episode, I have a link to a roster evaluation template that I've put together, and you can just click on that link and download it. It's free. You can use that template to help you go through this process of evaluating your company roster and doing the plus minus exercise that I described in this podcast. So just click on the link in the show notes and grab that. And if you think you'd benefit from an outside sounding board to help you through this process, reach out to me on my website, constructiongenius.com. There'll be a link in the show notes. You can book in a 10-minute conversation with me, and we can have a brief discussion to discuss if or how I can help you in terms of this roster evaluation and any next steps that may proceed from that discussion. The longer you put off tough people decisions, the more profound the negative impact on your company. So take an example from the sports world, apply it appropriately in your organization, but do the hard work of consistently evaluating your roster, plus minusing every single person, including yourself, and putting together a plan for upgrading your talent, whether it's through addition, through subtraction, or through development. And I would encourage you with one last thing. Make a commitment to do this on an annual basis at the least. In other words, every year. Evaluate your roster. And if you can do it a couple times a year, just to keep your finger right on the pulse of the quality of your people in your organization, then I think you'll find that to be extremely helpful. Thank you for listening today to Construction Genius. Feel free to share this episode with anyone that you think may benefit from it. As we always ask, I ask again, please give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps for the podcast to be seen by other people. And I really, really appreciate you listening to Construction Genius today. Today's episode was brought to you by the Construction Conclave. If you as a construction leader would like to develop your skills and get involved in a community of like-minded construction professionals who are focused on building healthy teams, profitable projects, and long-term successful businesses, then the Construction Conclave is for you. It's a private, invitation-only group of construction leaders that are focused on developing their leadership skills. We do training every single month online that looks at how to become a better leader in a very practical, straightforward way. We also have other events that build community and camaraderie so that you can associate with others who are interested in developing their skills as leaders. If you'd like more information and to see if you qualify for participating in the conclave, feel free to reach out to me, eric@ericanderton.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.